Okay, folks, welcome to Feel the Force. Today we have Trini, how do you pronounce your surname?
Trini Cubillos.
Cubillos. It's
Mhm.
Chilean, isn't it?
Yes.
So, yes, Trini is a human design specialist and she helps people tap into alignment with themselves through understanding their individual energies. And the human design chart, also called a body graph, is that right?
That's right.
It's calculated using your birth date, time, place, and that reveals your genetic design. And on a very practical level, it shows you where and how to access your body's consciousness as a decision-making tool, and ultimately how to live as your true self. So without further ado, I'll let you elaborate on human design and the 5 types as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
And from what I gather, there are more people with one type. It's not all proportionate.
Mhm.
So, for example, the reflector is very rare. It's
Right.
1% of the, or something like that. So, yeah, I was really interested in human design because I realized that I was, for example, a projector, and throughout my life I've been living on the decision-making patterns and behavioral patterns of people who are not of that type,
Mhm.
which left me feeling a bit
Mhm.
kind of frustrated, for example. So when you guys finally learn your human design type and what to do with it, you'll come more into alignment. He's like, oh, okay, I wasn't crazy. You know, this is who I am. So stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, how did you get into human design, and what made you become a specialist?
Mhm.
That'd be really good to know.
Thank you, Jesse. First of all, thank you for having me on. And I love the way you just described human design. I think it was very correct. I also love the question you just asked about how did I get into human design, because I was just today chatting with a friend about that.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll start by saying I'm a generator type, and we'll go into different types in this interview. But part of being a generator type is waiting to see what shows up in your outer environment. So human design just showed up in my life one day, and I started seeing it everywhere. And I know that some of you guys will relate to when like your brother or someone buys like this car that you've never maybe seen before, and then suddenly because he bought it, you start seeing it everywhere. Can you relate to that?
Mm, mm, mm. Yes.
So that was a feeling that I got, and I started seeing it everywhere. And I was like, what's this human design thing? Being in the spiritual world for quite a while, I had never heard of it, and I felt like I
Mm.
should have heard of it.
Yeah.
So I started researching a little bit into it because I felt like it was calling my name, but it was so complicated that it only lasted for a couple of days, and then I said, this thing is too complicated, and I left it behind for about 2 months. And in those 2 months, the amount of times that it just kept coming up, coming up, coming up was really like, it really seemed like I should listen.
Mm.
And at the time, I was in the middle of launching another project, very unrelated, and it was going quite well actually. And it was a very hard decision when I actually felt the pull and I said, okay, I'm going to read about this thing and
Mhm.
understand it a little bit more. And I
Yeah.
looked up my chart and I started learning. And it's interesting because I'm a different type than you, but I got the same feeling. I said, wow, I've been living my life the wrong way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been living my life doing the wrong things, right? Or with the wrong motivation. And it was that moment when I started feeling my gut pull towards this new system, which is my way of knowing what's correct for me as a generator. And
Mm.
it was a hard decision to make, to leave my other project behind, but it also felt so right because I was following this new system that I was learning. And that's when it just was a rabbit hole for me. I started getting deeper and deeper in until I just decided to become certified, to become a specialist.
Wow, that is so awesome. Absolutely. And that's really the most really aligned way to kind of guide people into their true potential, really, because well, obviously we're like eternal beings, but in this particular incarnation, we have like a kind of a stamp that we carry through this lifetime, and that's what determines our behaviors and you know, the decisions we make, and especially the actions we take. And as you said, as a generator, you go by what shows up in your environment, but also like gut feelings, going with intuition, right? So that can be scary for someone who's very kind of left-brained and logical, for who have been, yeah, if they've been living their lives in a very logical left-brained way, when they're like generators, there's how do they come to terms with bridging that gap, you know, the clashing of the intuition and the logic, you know?
That's perfect.
It's one thing, you know, knowing what you are, but like how to like apply it and transform your life through design.
Definitely. And it's not only for the generator. I think that if we were to sum up what human design is about, really, it's about realizing that for no one in the world is the mind the correct authority, and that we are deeply conditioned to use the mind to guide us through our lives and to make the decisions in our life. But you know, the mind, I always say, is the house for all our fears, is the house for all the, you know, that critical voice that is always behind us telling us we're not doing a good enough job. And so if we're making decisions from that place, no type, no generators, projectors, reflectors, any type, will get to a point of alignment through using the mind to make decisions. And so that's what's amazing about human design, is that it then tells you, okay, so you're not supposed to use your mind, but hold on, the way you're meant to make decisions is actually unique to you. Not everybody's meant to make decisions the same way. And so as you mentioned, yes, for the generator, of course, there's a lot of nuances, but for the generator, it's mostly connected to a gut feeling, which is different to intuition. It's more of a loud, desireful feeling. Okay. And the way that you make that bridge, that was such a good question, is you have to trust and you have to experiment. You have to start experimenting with it. And that's also the beauty of human design, is that it's not a belief system. When I talk to people about it, I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm just asking you if the information resonates with you. And if it does, it's a calling to then experiment with it in your life. And so for the generator, it's not that hard. For the projector, it's harder. But for the generator, for example, you can just take a day off from making decisions from your mind. Just use your gut. Start learning what that feels like for you. What does it feel like when I'm using my body instead of my mind to make decisions, when I'm being guided by my vehicle, and see what happens. And then that's what's going to bring trust, because you're going to feel more aligned. You're going to get more synchronicities. You're going to be, wow, like surprised with the way things are flowing. And that's what then's going to start building your trust muscle. But you have to kind of take the leap and experiment.
Wow. That's really scary, but really exciting as well. It's exciting. It's more of a, would you say, going with the flow? And is it sometimes, does it sometimes defy logic? For
always. Yeah, if it's going against what your mind's saying, it's probably a good sign. What I always tell, especially generators, is you want those situations where you know you really want to do something, but you have no idea why, and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's what you have to follow.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you kind of appease that split energy? Or, because obviously you've mastered it, but for people who are just starting out? I mean,
Oh, I haven't mastered it.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Right.
I think it's an ongoing process forever.
It must be exhausting, you know, having your mind say one thing and then your gut saying something else. It's like, how do you like harmonize and integrate both so you can like move forward together without any like split energy or resistance, you know?
Yeah, I think that one of the great tools that human design gives you is we have these what we call emotional themes. And so every type, and then maybe we can go into talking about types a little, but every type will have this feeling they get when they're off track. Okay, so let's talk, for example, about projectors, since I've given a lot of generator info. You're a projector. So for you, when you're kind of off track and you're not using what we call your strategy, which is the way that you should be interfacing and interacting with the world around you, when you're not following that, you're going to feel resistance. And for you, that's going to feel what we call bitterness. But it's hard to sum up in one word because language, but it could be like not feeling seen. It could be like, I have all this to give and nobody wants to take it. That's kind of the signature theme for the projector. And it's not something that you want to eliminate from your life, but what it helps you do is that it acts as a little bit of an alarm system to nudge you and be like, there's something that you're doing that is not aligned. And so I think that's kind of how I would work with being really disconnected with it and then starting to experiment and using this emotional theme to be like, okay, well, there's something that I have to change. That helps you kind of start the experiment again and go tweaking some things to see how you could feel more aligned. And then on the other side of the coin, there's a positive emotional theme that you feel when you are aligned, which for projectors, for example, is success. So that feeling that you're like giving yourself, putting your energy out there and actually helping people and people are actually listening, that feeling of success is what projectors are going to feel more and more as they follow their strategy. So I think there's no easy way to answer your question or to do that. I think that's why human design is not accessible to everyone, because not everyone can just start experimenting with not using their minds. It's a highly conditioned thing in our society. But if you're able to do that, then you can use these two kind of signposts to guide yourself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. And for instance, there are solutions for each problem within each type. Like for instance, projectors, as you said, we might encounter bitterness or resistance. What I read was that the solution is wait to be invited, which is interesting, but isn't that a bit passive, and could that lead to a very boring life, just sort of waiting around, you know, to be invited, you know? So
I know.
How does one make a more proactive, fulfilling life than just sitting around waiting to be invited?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think that projectors in general are the type that will most of the time hear about their human design and their type and their strategy and kind of cringe and wish they were a different type.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah, right? It's hard to hear that you have to wait. None of us likes to wait. And there certainly is an answer to how you can make that more active. But I'd first like to say that so that we can start understanding a little bit more of the basics. There are 5 types in human design. So we can all be kind of the big category. If we were talking, for example, about astrology and the 12 zodiac signs, there are 5 types in human design. And each of the types then has a strategy, right? But the reason why we are a certain type is because our aura is a certain way, our energetic body. So the energy ball that we are, that usually we say we have an aura, for example, but really it's that we are this energetic ball, and that this physical aspect, this physical body is part of that, is a manifestation of that. And So the way that the aura works for each type is different. So projectors will have an aura that is focused and penetrating. That's what we call it, focused and penetrating. So if you imagine the energy traveling in a certain way for projectors, it wouldn't be just like a circle like you always see it maybe depicted. It would be more of like a funnel going from here, from the self, straight into the other person, for example, that you're interacting with.
Okay.
And so,
right.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, because, you know, a lot of people find me really intimidating, and
exactly.
I don't mean to be at all, because
Yeah.
now that you've said that,
Mm-hmm.
it's to do with the energy or whatever. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. Wow.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
The things that you see, guys, you know, you end up coming to terms with it, and finding out about your non-physical aspects and what they're doing behind the scenes.
And they were always doing it, you just didn't know.
Yeah,
And in a society where we're all kind of conditioned to be the same thing, right? Like we're meant to be this way, and you're meant to grow up and do this, then the people that are like different, which is all of us, we're all different in our own unique ways, then we're made to like fit this mold, and that's where we get disconnected with who we are. And so for the projector, you are meant to be that. You're meant to be somewhat intimidating, because you have this ability. Your power as a projector is to be able to really penetrate and get into a situation or understand the person in a deeper way. That's also going to cause you to feel like you're more distanced, like you're more of an observer of situations than in the situation themselves. That's something else that you can feel and that people can feel about you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
And so I'm trying to connect it with a question, and I forgot the question that we were answering.
Well, yeah. In essence, we're just going with the flow with the strategies on, you know, waiting.
Right.
Like, for example, wait to be invited. Perfect. and the caveats, you know, such as feeling resistance versus getting out of that block, you know, with the strategy, you know. And once you know your strategy, you can breathe properly. It's like, oh, okay, you know. So why don't we go into the strategies of the 5 types?
Right.
And
so let's start with the projector, since we were talking about that one already.
Sure.
So the aura that we were talking about, that penetrating aspect, that's because projectors are people who are meant to come here and guide. If most of the people on the planet are here to add energy to this big mix of already existing energies and kind of create things and work, projectors are not really here to do that. They're here to look at the energies that are already available and be able to guide those energies so that they can go in the right direction, so that they can, you know, go into higher frequencies, however we want to call it. And so that shape of the energy and the way that energy is working for you as projectors is actually something that other people will notice. They will notice unconsciously that you are someone that needs to be invited and that has something to share, that has a unique point of view that can help us. So the waiting for the invitation, it's not that passive, because you actually are already attracting invitations just because you are you. The thing with the waiting for the invitation is that it's kind of like a protection for your energy, because as a projector, you're going to feel like you always want to go and give your energy, like you always have something to say about things, because you are constantly with your superpowers seeing how everything can be improved. But if you go and you use it every time you feel it, you're going to waste your energy, and it's not going to go to the correct places, right? And you're going to get burned out. And so the waiting for the invitation is more of a protection, so that your energy goes where it needs to go. And when somebody invites you to share, then your energy will land and it will actually make a difference to that person, and it has the power to transform. But when you're just throwing it out there without the invitation, people are just not going to be able to take it in.
That's so profound, for, fellow projectors who are watching this, that you feel all the time when you like this great impulse to share, your wisdom and your gifts, and then you just get tumbleweed or crickets, at the other end of the line. And the person you're sharing it with, they're not even meeting you halfway. And so you feel kind of like bitter, and you're like, oh, what's wrong with me? Not to sound arrogant, but I have all this wisdom to share and nobody's taking it, so what's the point, So we can get a bit discouraged, bitter, frustrated a lot. And as you said, the key here is waiting for that invitation, knowing that, but also, as you said, it's not passive, because projectors need to be on the lookout for opportunities. It's like surfing. And there's always a wave that comes, and you got to like go on that wave, which is in the form of an invitation in some form or another.
Definitely.
That is fascinating. Thank you for clarifying that.
You're so welcome. So projectors are about 20% of the population. So if you are a projector, then there's also that part that you are quite different from the majority of people, right? So then the majority of people are either generators or manifesting generators. And manifesting generators are a subtype of the generators. So we could say that about 70% of the population is a generator. And generators are people who have their, what we call the sacral center activated. And all that means is in simple language, is that they're here to work. They're here to put out energy into the world. And thus, for them, what's really important is finding work that they love, finding something that they're vibing with, that they're putting energy into, and that it's giving them energy back. That's why with generators, we always say, find things that light you up, because that's what you're meant to be doing. The strategy for the generator is to wait to respond. So this one also has a waiting in it, but it's not for an invitation. The generator actually has to wait for something to show up in his or her outer environment. So for example, in a practical way, the generator could have an idea, I want to start a business, and then we have to wait for a couple of days, because usually it's a fast process, but we wait and see what shows up in our outer environment that confirms that that was a good idea for us. And so for example, if I say I want to start a human design business and I don't take action, that's correct for me to not take action right away. And then I'm surfing Instagram and see someone talking about human design on Instagram and having a business, and then I see that my gut reacts to that, then that's correct for me, and now I can go take action.
So basically, if it feels good, you follow through.
If it feels good, you follow through, but always waiting for an external confirmation from the universe, never from an internal, from like an idea. So all types except for the manifestor, which we'll get to, have to wait. Most humans on this planet are not here to just get an idea, initiate, go make it happen. We all have to be more patient and kind of co-create with the universe.
Yeah, I like that. Because the monkey mind always wants to, okay, let's do it now. We're doing it now, now or never, and you kind of have to be like the rider of the horse is like, whoa, like, rein it in. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, so that's you. That's you.
That's me. That's me. And what you just said, the reason why that's also so fascinating is because there's a reason behind that. So the next type is the manifestor, and they're about 7 to 8% of the population. They're also quite few in terms of percentage. But the thing with manifestor is they're the only ones that are able to initiate. What we call initiate is kind of get an idea and make it happen. They're here to initiate. And so they're here to make change and, propel us into the next stages of things, to get a project started, for example. And then let others take over and finish it. They're starters.
Mm.
And they have been, for most of our history, the people that have been on top, the authority figures, the kings, the queens, the people making the laws. And so it's not a coincidence that the whole narrative that most of us live is a very manifestor narrative. The whole just
Yeah.
do it thing, the whole, you got to go create it yourself. If you don't go find the opportunity, it's not going to happen to you. All that speech, it's actually correct just for 8% of the population.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And then society's so conditioned like that. It's like, you know, go do this and prove your worth and da 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 da. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
manifestor
Manifestors.
mantras.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so and something interesting you might want to know as a projector is that what human design says about the way things are changing right now energetically in the planet is that manifestors were kind of the leaders of the past, and now manifestors are kind of at the stage where they just want to do their own thing and be left alone. And so projectors, which is actually the newest type of human that appeared later on, in 1871, when there was an evolution of the human energetic system, that's when why did that happen? Because projectors are here to be the new leaders. And so it's interesting because in this new paradigm, leaders are not here to then be hierarchical and you do this and you build that pyramid. It's more of a guidance of guiding people into themselves, which I'm sure you'll be like really happy to hear because you seem to be on that path.
Yeah, well, intuitively I have, because I started this channel, Feel the Force, as quite humorously, the Ginger Guide. So it's kind of like, spiritual humor with embedded truths on like, guiding people towards, more expansion, enlightenment, but obviously, gingerly, because like I show them the door, they're the one who has to open it. But it's like doing it like gently, but without like in a non-manifestor way. And realizing that you don't really need to rely upon an external guru. However, it's good to have someone as a reference point who can show you signposts, and sort of usher you in the right direction. And I feel that manifestors are sort of age of Pisces kind of leaders, and projectors are more for like the age that has now dawned upon us, which is the age of Aquarius.
Definitely.
It's more all about like peace and light and love, and stuff like that. So you don't really need a hierarchical authoritarian leader anymore. So what we're seeing in the world is basically the highlighting of all that, but also the absurdity of these old Piscean manifestor rulers that won't be able to sustain their energy in this new age of Aquarius, which is much more soft and flowing and innovative with higher technologies and higher frequencies, and stuff like that. So,
definitely.
Yeah, well, that's good to have that confirmation, really, because up till this point, I've been really frustrated and questioning my whole purpose and existence, but the tide seems to be turning now, which is interesting.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So the strategy for manifestors is a little bit different. So since they don't have to like wait for anybody else or anything else to confirm anything, they're just meant to act. But when they act, they have a repelling aura. So they have an aura that is very closed. And the reason it's repelling is because it's meant to be able to go against obstacles and just move stuff out of the way so that they can make things happen. But what that can cause is it can cause friction, a lot of friction. And a lot of the times when a manifestor acts, it's a very quick move, and they will impact a lot of people with their actions. And there's going to be a lot of like resistance that's going to drive them crazy and make them angry. People are going to be like, why did you do that? Why didn't you tell me? And and that's like the manifestor's worst nightmare. So their strategy is to inform right before they act. So they get an impulse of what they need to do from the universe. They need to get in contact with that, how that feels, because they're also not meant to be acting from the mind. And then when they're about to act, they're just meant to quickly be like, okay, who's going to be impacted by my actions? And then just quickly inform, not as a way to ask for permission or anything like that, just as a way to inform. And what that does energetically is it calms the energies down, and it releases the resistance that they would have had if they wouldn't have informed in the first place.
So manifestors, if you want to take over the world, just inform people first.
Yeah, just let us know, and then everything will be good.
Yeah, that's funny. Great.
Yeah.
So the fourth one is, so
Reflector.
we've done projector, generator, manifestor, and manifesting generator. Is that one of them?
Right. So I put those together into the same group just because I'm sure a lot of people want to know the basics, but there are differences between the manifestor and the manifesting generator, but their strategy is the same.
Okay. So for the manifesting generator, they need to inform people what they're doing.
They need to respond. They need to wait to respond. That's the generator strategy. But because they have a little bit of manifestor in them, a lot of them do well with informing as well. So sometimes it's respond, then inform, then act for them.
Respond, inform, and then act.
Yeah. And then the last type, which is the reflectors, which is just 1% of the population, is actually a type that is very, very different than the other types. Whereas we call all the other types solar beings, we call the reflectors lunar beings because they don't have what we call activations in the sun, and so they're more driven by the energies of the moon. A reflector is a person that has no definition in their design, and definition is when we have a chakra that is activated in us. And when something is activated in us, it gives us a taste of who we are. It's an energy that we can always come back to. It's who we are, and we emanate it out into the world. So reflectors are special because they don't have any of that. It's all very empty, but it's all very empty because they're meant to be kind of a person that takes everything in and then reflects it back to us, kind of like a mirror.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
And
the reflector type is very special.
Any notable figures throughout history that have been reflectors? Because they're very rare.
That's a good question. Yeah, I actually don't know. I mean, I know for example, they talk about a celebrity. I think it's Sandra Bullock. They talk that she's a reflector. I actually haven't looked into a lot of historical people being the different types, but it definitely is very different. And even in the human design community, like if I get a reflector reading, I'll be a little nervous because I understand it from a textbook point of view, but it's so different that I sometimes feel like it's impossible for me to actually understand what that's like. And it is, because I'm not that. But basically, there are these people who are kind of sampling the world around them. And they're here to also teach us this oneness of everything, that we don't have to cling to having an identity, to saying this is who I am, or this is how I am, or I like this, or I like that, because they're kind of sampling all these different things that they're living with and choosing the places and the things that feel good to them. And what Raoul, who is the founder of human design, always said about them is that they should be in the center of a community. There should be 100 people around every reflector, because when you see a reflector, what you see is a reflection of who you are. And so reflectors can act as calibrators, and they can tell us how we're doing as a society. if they're not feeling good, then that's a sign that something in the environment is not working well. And if they're feeling good, that's a sign that that we're on the right track.
That is fascinating, really. And also very healthy, you know, reminding everyone of our implicit oneness and not getting too caught up in the game of clinging to a fixed identity, which can be in excess, that can lead to too much egotism. So, yeah, very interesting. Interestingly enough, I was convinced I was a reflector. And then when I found out that I was a projector, I was like, no, this can't be right. This can't be right. So,
well, they have a lot of similarities.
Interesting.
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
And so the strategy for the reflector is, I think, the hardest one to hear, which is to wait a lunar cycle. So when they need to make big decisions in their life, they're meant to wait a whole 28 days or so, because they will actually feel like different people throughout that month, and that will never change for them. It's a cycle that they can learn and get in touch with. Because what will happen is that their definition will go changing. And all that means is that they'll feel one day like a manifesting generator, and then 2 days later, they'll feel like a generator, then they'll feel like a manifestor. And they'll be able to use their energies, but only if they're in touch with that. If they can understand that cycle, they can use those energies to their advantage. And so when they're having to make a big decision, they have to go through feeling like all those different people and look at the decision from all the different lenses to finally get clarity after a month.
Wow, that sounds really schizophrenic.
Yeah.
And how do they find stability in the midst of all that?
They don't. They don't.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest thing. Every type has like a hard thing that they have to like break away from the conditioning. And for the reflector, it's like realize that your fluidity is your superpower, that you're not just meant to feel like one certain thing. And that's why, again, they remind us of that oneness, that even if, and something you mentioned in the beginning of this interview is like, even if you have this definition for this one lifetime, in the end, we're all the same one piece of consciousness, right? So
yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing, I think, reflectors, and I definitely want to learn more about them.
Amazing. So where can we take human design into this new age we're entering, and apply it to how we live, you know, and because decision making, especially in the world today, is becoming less encouraged because of external circumstances. Yeah, how can it be really owned and applied for these new times we're entering, would you say?
I think that it goes back to the fact that it's an experiment. I think the beautiful thing that human design gives us is a push towards getting to know who we are. A lot of us are walking around not understanding who we are, what we have as a strength, what our weaknesses are, because we're just brought up to try to fit in this mold that is breaking apart, right? As we shift into a higher consciousness, that's breaking apart, and we're being called to individuality. And that starts with getting to know ourselves. So the first thing, if the information resonates with you, right, that's the first thing, because there's probably a lot of different ways to get into a state of being in alignment with yourself. Human design is a tool that is one of them. But if it resonates with you, the first thing is to look up your chart, right? And to get that kind of basic info that we talk about. And the good thing is that more and more with time, there's more resources to learn on your own if that's something that you want. And when you understand your type, your strategy, and then something we call authority, which are kind of like the big key pieces you can start with, then we can start experimenting and being compassionate with ourselves and seeing it as this journey of coming back into who we are through self-love and acceptance, and not needing anything to be a certain way, just taking it for the experiment that it is. So that's what I would say is how we can use it, is practically by looking it up, seeing what our strategy is, what our type is, what our authority is, and then making the commitment to take that information from outside of the theoretical and seeing what happens with our life when we actually start using it. Because even though it can be really hard to let go of the mind and make that kind of jump, what I always tell clients is, how has using your mind worked until now? How do you feel about where you are now, and how your decisions have brought you here? And a lot of the times the answer will be that they're looking for something else, something deeper. They know they're here to do something deeper, but they don't know how. And so the invitation is to go and to experiment with what the information tells you.
That is so brilliant. I love what you said about this this new call to individuality, and how we've grown up being conditioned by something quite one size fits all, which it doesn't, you know, and
Yeah.
that approach has been quite damaging and debilitating for many people, and that's led them to the conclusion, oh, I guess this is life, and they just get really passive and just kind of resign, you know, from their whole essence and purpose, which is there, you know, lurking underneath. And I feel that human design really is like the golden doorway for people to rekindle their own individual spirit and actually say, oh, actually, I am here. You know, I'm here, and I'm, you know, meant to do something and really contribute and participate in a very specific way. You know, through my own specific design strategy.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it's beautiful to think that, you know, there's this whole talk about purpose and what our purpose is in this hunt for purpose. And I can definitely relate to it myself, trying to find like the one thing that you're supposed to be good at and excel at and be known for. But what if our purpose is actually to be able to shine the light that we came here to shine without any filters, you know, to take out all those filters so that what's coming out, the energy that we're constantly emanating into the world, even if it's when we're doing mundane things, is actually our own signature of energy that is so pure and that is, you know, doing its thing, that we don't even know what the whole thing in the big picture is, but our purpose can be being that in the most clear and pristine way possible, and not this one specific thing, just being able to own who we are and be it and see what happens.
Exactly. And that's what you can control, you know. And it's through that self-awareness and knowing that that sort of sovereignty comes through, you know. And what I've seen, you know, in the last year is people feeling completely out of control and powerless because of the events that are currently unfolding. And you know, it takes a lot to say that, you know, that really isn't within their control. However, there is so much that is in their control that they don't even realize, you know. And in the midst of all this global push towards a communist agenda, I think people are getting distracted from the real purpose that's coming through, which is the return to self-sovereignty and individuality and, you know, alignment with, you know, source and their real, you know, essence. So human design is something quite, would you say, esoteric, that's been hidden from you know, common knowledge? Because for me, I came to it just by synchronicity or, you know, or grace or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, definitely esoteric. It's it's both. There are definitely lots of links to genetics, DNA, but that I think those are things that are going to start linking up scientifically as time goes by. It's also quite a new system. It was downloaded into the planet in 1987, so it's not too ancient. And it's really been in the last 10 years or even 5 years, I would say, that it's been picking up a lot of speed. And I think it's not a coincidence. I think it's because people are starting to be ready. And the way that I view everything that is happening right now in the planet with what you were mentioning is some people are needing that extremity of, you know, fear and everything that's going on. We can call it, you know, darkness, to push us into the light. It's very clear to me that there's like this very two different realities happening at the same time, and that every single moment we're being asked to choose which one we're going to, like, which train we're going to go on. And sometimes when that split is happening, to me it feels like both sides are necessary, you know, because we live in this dual world. If such a big shift is happening, then there needs to be this chaos as well and this dismantling.
yes, yeah,
So definitely human design, I think, comes to play a role in that, and whoever feels the calling to tap into their individuality and empowerment. I think it's such an empowering tool. And yeah, it's not a coincidence that it's popping up more and more in these times, I think.
absolutely. And you give consultations, right? For
Right, I call them sessions, yes, where we just talk about your
sessions.
design.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, obviously, I'll post the link for that below in the description.
perfect. Thank you so much.
But yeah, we're coming up to an hour. Is there anything you would like to add about what you do, human design?
Yeah, well, I have a very active Instagram at Trini Human Design, and a YouTube channel as well with Trini Cubillos, just my name. And I'm constantly posting information for people who are interested in the topic to consume. I really think that I really believe in this information being out there for free. So I'm constantly making content. But at the same time, it really helps to have someone guide you. So I always offer those one-on-one sessions as well. And what I would say is that if the information that you heard, or even like something just drew you to click this video, or whatever it is, that something brought you here and it resonates with you, I would invite you to dig a little deeper, because that's kind of an invitation or a sign that it could be for you. And something important that I would add is, you know, with human design, it's an experiment and it's meant to be empowering. So if there are things that you hear that sound limiting or that shrink you, let those go. Human design is a system that is high vibrational, so you should be listening for what is expanding you, and not paying attention to those parts of it that are not, because maybe it's not the correct moment right now to go into that, or maybe that just piece of information isn't for you. But I would definitely invite anybody who resonates with information to dig a little deeper, to at least know their type and know what that means.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, I hope that's been tremendously edifying for those who are watching, as it has been for me. Listen, Trini, thank you so much for your time and energy and your glorious insights on this leading edge technology.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to just spread this knowledge to as many people as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. So fantastic. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
we'll continue onward a bit after this recording. But
yeah,
thank you so much. As always, be free, have fun, and may the force be with you. Take care. Okay.